You mentioned you want to talk about ChatGPT, and I'm very curious to talk about this. So please,
Yeah.
you had something you want to bring up.
So it's more of a question prompt for you. You mentioned how like it's getting easier and easier to just hop into ChatGPT, right? And be like, oh, brainstorm this. But I'm wondering, and I'd love to know what you think from your perspective. Is it dangerous? Dangerous feels excessive. Is it bad for your creativity long term to have that ability, right? Because the example I'm thinking of is now when I need to go somewhere, I always use Google Maps, right? And it's become kind of a default where I'm like, oh yeah, like go into the place, name of the place, type it in. But there was a time where, well, one, I knew more street names. I just had that knowledge better in my head. And two, I felt like my spatial awareness was better when it comes to the city I'm in or the area I'm in. And the Google Maps thing has kind of turned off my brains, like the areas in my brain for that. It was like, oh, we need to go to a place. No, we don't need to remember all the complex, like where this intersection is and where that block is. We're just going to use the maps. So I was wondering if you think a similar thing might happen for you and for people with ChatGPT and other stuff like that.
I think there's a lot of different ways I could go with an answer. You mentioned creativity, which I want to address, but I want to start with like a general answer because I think there's a general layer that needs to be addressed before going into the creativity aspect of it.
Okay.
One of the things that I think about when I think about Google Maps, when I think about any sort of tool, I can say this about phone numbers, right? Smartphones, contacts, lists in your phone, is AI, like any other tool, provides a layer of abstraction. So in the same way that your smartphone abstracted away the need to memorize most phone numbers, or Google Maps abstracted away the need to memorize routes and street names and even orientation within a city and the ability to find landmarks and all these other things. I think AI is going to abstract away certain things that we're not fully seeing yet. But I think it feels like a pretty safe bet to say that it will abstract away certain things that will become just skills that we don't have as well in the future. In the same way that, just to give one more example, like, looking up a reference in the library is something that I think everybody could have done 30 years ago or 20 years ago. Now I research things all the time online. I could not describe in detail the Dewey Decimal System to you right now if I had to.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a technology previously that we had that allowed us to do something, and now there's a better way to do it, or a different way to do it that's more efficient, right? Maybe not better. I think that's an important thing to remember. So AI is going to do that. And I don't know yet how it's going to do it, but I feel very confident saying that it's going to do it in some ways. One thing that I've noticed, and I've seen people doing through the forums that I've been in, there are people who are starting businesses right now who are turning to ChatGPT to ask questions. And I've already seen it starting to be treated kind of like an oracle, right? In the same way that people will ask Google a question, they'll go to ChatGPT and be like, what's the answer to this? And I have not seen as much open discussion of the validity of the answer. And I've also seen a lot of language that indicates that people are personifying ChatGPT and AI, in that they're treating it like you would, and this is one of the things about the names of AIs, like you name Siri, you name Alexa, you give it this human quality. And I remember reading a while back about, maybe we need to be careful with that because you do not want to start thinking about these things like people in the traditional sense, because you need to be able to call into question the veracity of what they are producing in a way where you might think you're offending a person by doing it, but you're not going to offend a machine or a system or technology by, if I said, well, maybe question the results of what Google pops up in your search feed. It's like, okay, that should be fine, right? That should not be a problem to do.
Yeah.
Whereas, well, what makes Alexa right, or why, maybe Siri is wrong. Intuitively, I'm thinking about that in some way, or it seems like a lot of people are thinking about that as a person. And so it becomes this, you start to build an emotional relationship to the tool that can work to your detriment in terms of how much we trust the information that's providing.
Yeah, and I think it has the notoriety that Google doesn't, where, Google is, to go back to your Dewey Decimal System thing, right? Google is basically the librarian showing us the book, or the system showing us the book, right? And then you read the book, you form your own opinions. But I feel like ChatGPT is the equivalent of having, let's say, the average dude who has read all the books and remembers it very well, right? And yeah, I think you raise a good point where, like, people, because of that level of abstraction, are like, oh no, this is the guy. This is my boy. I'm really glad ChatGPT isn't named like Alfred or whatever, because I imagine that feeling would be even more. But I think all those people, this sounds like I'm putting bad juju in the air, but I think they're not going to get the success that they would like to see from that advice, depending on how they use it. Because it's my strong belief in life, in career, in content creation, in literally any element of this existence. Common advice on its own, right? The type that you'd find on Google, the type that you'd find wherever, is kind of useless, right? It's only when you take that advice and then mold it towards your context where it starts making sense. Or not making sense, having success as well, right? So, a lot of self-help stuff would be like, you need to do this and this and this and this. And like, they'll give you a good framework, but you knowing the framework doesn't tell you anything. You doing exactly what the self-help guy wouldn't do anything. But like, you need to take that and then actually apply the thinking towards being there, right? So I feel like if people are doing that with ChatGPT and using it as like a starting point, sure, that's great, right? And then they're doing their own thinking. But if people are like, well, ChatGPT told me to like make a video about my product, so I'm gonna make a video about my product the way ChatGPT told me to. And I think and I've seen this a lot. I've seen a lot of accounts, and because I'm into marketing, I just, like, oh, what they're doing? Oh, what are they doing wrong? What do I think I would do better? And a lot of them are doing like trends, or like they do dances, or like, and these are things that I've seen in articles as common advice, right? But if you just copy and paste that idea and you don't put the critical thinking into, okay, but how would this actually look? Or like, do I want to tweak it a little bit? Then you see like what those accounts I've been talking about see, where it's like middling success, if any.
I couldn't agree more. And specifically about, the idea that context really plays an important role when receiving advice or receiving an answer, like the ability to contextualize it and to not only understand the answer or the suggestion, but also how to arrive at that. It's a cliche thing to say, but the journey really is important, not just the destination. And I think that's true with a lot of the output that we're seeing from AI tools. To kind of answer the second part of the question, which is creativity, right? I think that adage is going to become more important, right? The journey is going to be very important, not just the destination, which is kind of the topic of a video I'm making right now, which is like being able to press a button and generate something.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to change things, and that, everybody will be able to make a Rembrandt like this, right? And a unique whatever. But with content and with different forms of media, we're kind of already there, right? Like, I don't know the stats off the top of my head. I need to still do this research, but Spotify has like over 1 million podcasts now, right? There's insane numbers. I think like hundreds of hours of original music uploaded to music platforms every day. I'm giving music examples for context because that's the world I know the best, but video is the same. Writing is the same. Writing probably has it the worst because writing is maybe the most accessible of all creative mediums digitally. And so the outcome, the end product, is already kind of like, well, we can get one of those whenever we need it. So the fact that a computer can now generate it convincingly is only a slight step above, in my mind, the fact that there's already a ton of people that are generating it convincingly.
Yeah.
So I think that ability to show the process with creativity is going to be one big part of it. Not just the destination, but the whole human process of getting there, right? No matter whether you used AI to help you get there or not, capturing that authenticity of the route is going to be really important. But I think the other thing that I want to mention, because I think you touched on it too, with, talking about how there you have this AI that's like the friend that's read all the books, and just getting an answer right away from that system runs the risk of presenting information and just being like, all right, cool, this is like the common knowledge answer. I think a lot of creativity, well, one, I think a lot of creativity is going to come out of disagreeing with AI and not accepting its output or questioning its output in some sense. I think that's an opportunity for people to be creative, is like, or not even just not accepting it, but like taking the output that is clearly one way and trying to make it into something else. But the other thing that's going to be important, and I think is an aspect where people can continue to be wildly creative without a problem, is AI systems. I think a lot of them are very heavy feedback loops, right? Where you get an input and that input gets rewarded. And then, like an algorithm that suggests content, all of a sudden you're only getting that style of thing because, well, the system's figured out that the person handing out points at the output likes that. So let's make more of it.
Yeah.
Your ability to break out of that feedback loop of, okay, cool, we've gotten enough of this, let's go in this direction, and context switch. And I know that's a very abstract way of talking about it, but the ability to break out of a certain feedback loop and jump into another one and use those to tell stories is, I think, going to be something that becomes a new skill. It's like, okay, cool, we trained an AI to do this, but then we broke it and trained it to do something else. And we, as the people that were organizing it, are now going to show you how it doesn't behave in the way that you would think. And, or we use that to entertain it, to create entertainment in some way, or to create a story, or to show that at the end of the day, at least for now, these are systems that humans have built, and this is what's funny about it, right? Or this is what's entertaining about it. So using that attribute of AI systems, of deep learning systems and machine learning structures, to almost put on a performance. I know that's a very abstract way of talking about it, but I think that's also how I prefer to think about it right now, because I don't want to make super early calls on like, oh, it's clearly going to be done like this. It's like, no, we're like a good app, or like a really good, like the iPhone was to smartphones. I think we're going to see something done with AI in the worlds of creativity and outside, where it's like, oh crap, that's a quantum leap forward in terms of what this is capable of. And there's going to be a kind of a realized vision of like, oh, we didn't even understand the foundational elements of what we could do with this. We were kind of thinking, and we were thinking of this as a condensed yellow pages in the terms of the iPhone. It's not. It's something to go play Doodle Jump on, right? Or launch Instagram on. And I think we're going to see that with AI integrating into other things, or maybe becoming its own thing. And I want to be open to seeing that. I don't want to become really narrow and like, oh, it's going to happen in this way. I don't know.
I think you're spot on. I think there's definitely going to be a way. There's going to be a winners and losers when it comes to the use of AI. And I think your way, at least the thought processes around your way, is going to be the winners, right? That's going to be the, those content creators or those brands who make insane campaigns that go incredibly well, versus, the blogs that just pump stuff into ChatGPT and like make shitty blogs, and then are like, why are people leaving? I think I really seen this week an example of that, or example of things going that way, when I was telling you about the BuzzFeed firing like 15% of its writing staff because we got ChatGPT. And I don't know, it sounds, it is not a coincidence that the place on the internet that is known for the worst articles is using ChatGPT, and that is hitting their standard of article. This isn't like, Tim Ferriss isn't like, I'm gonna just turn it into ChatGPT, right? Like it's not some like known blogger who is like everyone loves their content, who like, wow, I love how he put that. It's BuzzFeed, and they are the first, at least the first big company I've seen to be like, yeah, we're gonna fire people for ChatGPT. So I can definitely see going forward there's gonna be and they might be successful, they might save a lot of money, right? Like, but in terms of objective, I guess there's no objective quality, but in terms of quality of content, like quality of things people are going to put out, the way you're talking about is definitely going to be the better way forward if you want to maximize the thing you're making.
Hey friends, if you liked that clip of the Create Connected podcast, you might like listening to the entire episode using the link on screen.